everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing on with my top 5 series. I had mentioned last month that I'm going to try to do one of these every single month, and this month I'm going to do my top 5 powders. Now, powders are kind of tricky to narrow down to 5 because I use different powders for different things. For instance, I'll use a setting powder for my entire face, I'll use a finishing powder to buff out my face, and I'll use a separate powder for under my eyes. So I am going to do it this way. I'm going to do my top 5 face powders, and then I'm going to kind of clump the finishing and under eye powders together. So it's not going to be technically 5, but for the face, I did narrow it down to 5 powders. That's 10. I narrowed it down to 5. As always, I kind of like to give you a rundown of how many of whatever makeup product I'm talking about that I actually have, so you can know what it took for me to actually narrow it down to the 5 that I'm going to talk about. So for powders, while I have an obsessively large amount of powders, it's probably still not near what I have for like bronzers and blushes, but I do have 35 powders, and that does not include what I have in my kit. I probably have another 15 in my kit. So we're just talking about the ones that I use on myself personally, because the ones I use on my clients are a whole different story. So let's get started. As always, I'm not going to go in any particular order, except I am going to save the best for last. So the first one I'm going to talk about is actually the one that I have on my face today, and it's the Cover FX Perfect Setting Powder. I'm going to put down here the weight and the price for all of them, so you will be able to compare as we go along. This is probably the newest powder. Well, no, it's not the newest powder that I own. It's the newest one that's launched out of all the ones that I've owned. And I feel like it has been out for, I don't know, a few months now. And I know they just came out with a compact version of this powder, but I only have the loose. Now, the reason I like this is because honestly, it does not look like powder. It's one of those ones that I feel like you could just kind of cake on and cake on and cake on, and you're never going to feel like you're cakey. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It just doesn't cake on. It has a natural to luminous finish. Some people will argue that it does not have a luminous finish. I just feel like it's definitely not matte, and that it starts off natural. Like, I just did my makeup, so it starts off looking natural. But then I feel like throughout the day, it gets more, and I don't even want to say luminous because that kind of alludes to dewy, and it doesn't get dewy. It just kind of mixes with your natural oils and just really looks like skin. I mean, it just doesn't look like powder, and that's why I love this the most. I use this the most on matte foundations. For instance, today I had the Makeup Forever Matte Velvet Plus on, and I automatically went to this one because I think this sets the best over more matte foundations. Because again, it doesn't add any coverage, it doesn't add any more matte look or cakiness. If you put like a powder foundation or a loose powder with coverage on top of a matte foundation, it can get cakey really quick. So that's why I like to use this one on top of matte foundations. I do have 2 colors in this, I believe, and I am in the translucent light. Going on the no powder theme, I'm going to talk about this next. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush. I always have problems saying this. Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder. Okay, they have 3 colors in this: fair, light, and fair, medium, and dark. And I have medium. So this is it right here, and you can see how much I absolutely adore this because rarely do I hit pan on a powder. I also carry these in my kit. This is another powder that I feel like no matter what you do, you can't get too much on your face. It sets any makeup beautifully. I feel like I can use this on top of luminous foundations, on top of natural semi-matte foundations, on top of matte foundations. It doesn't matter what I use this over. It sets it beautifully. It looks beautiful. It does keep the shininess, or you don't need to touch up when you have this powder, I guess is what I'm saying. But on that note, this is my all-time favorite no-fail touch-up powder. For instance, if I do get a little shiny one day with, whatever foundation and powder combination I'm using, I will come in with this powder, and I'm going to show you the brush I use. I use the Delium Tools 968 brush, which is this like a slanted, I mean, it's a little bit dense. I wouldn't call it a kabuki, but I just set that in there just like this on its slant, and I will just press in where I'm a little shiny, and I'm talking like it sets me for the rest of the day. I don't care if it's noon when I touch up. I will not have to touch up again the rest of the entire day. So this is very multifunctional for me because, again, I do love it as an actual setting powder. It's a great touch-up powder, and I even use it sometimes on myself and a lot of times on my clients to set their concealer. Great versatile powder. For as much as I know, I believe this is $45. You know, for Charlotte Tilbury, I don't feel like it's that bad. All right, the next powder I'm going to talk about is the Urban Decay Naked Skin Ultra Definition Loose Finishing Powder. They have probably 6 or 7 shades. I am in the color Naked Medium Light. And this is a tinted powder. This is not a translucent powder. Translucent? I'm so busy today and I'm in a rush because I need to get going somewhere. And so I'm just talking so fast that I'm not making sense. This is not a translucent powder. Because it does have 7 shades, it is a tinted powder. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that tint. And you probably won't be able to see it on my hand either, but I can see it. But this is silky. This is what I call a silky powder. This is not something that you want to use, in my opinion, on top of a more matte foundation. It will work. Maybe if you have oily skin, you'll want to do something like that. But for me, my normal to sometimes dry skin, I don't want to do that. I use this on top of my MAC Face and Body. I use it on top of my Josie Marin. I love it on top of the Vibrancy foundation. My Kevyn Aucoin Etherealist. Anything that's got a little bit more of a luminous effect, especially if it's a little bit lighter in coverage, I like to use this because it's tinted, it does add just a little bit more coverage, and it does have such a silky, beautiful finish. This is one that I feel like you can use too much of, so you do have to be a little bit careful, but the finish is so gorgeous that it's completely worth the trial and error that it may take to get it right because it's so pretty. Okay, this one is the most expensive. It's the most expensive out of all the ones I have. This is the By Terry Hyaluronic Hydra Powder. I call this powder Botox in a jar because it is Botox in a jar. There's something about it that takes away all your fine lines. It smooths out your smile lines. It prevents anything from creasing in your smile lines. And it just, I don't know, it's like an honest filter for your face. I feel like people say that sometimes and they don't really understand what they're saying. But if I were to sit in front of this camera, and I don't even think this camera has a skin smoothing filter. I know a lot of that controversy is going around right now. If it does, I sure don't know how to use it, and I don't use it. But if it did, and I can imagine turning that on and just like coming across my face and just putting this like film of smoothness over my face, that's what this powder does. It is translucent. It does only come in 1 shade. It is expensive. I believe it's like $60 for this somewhat small pan. 0.35 ounces. That's pretty typical for a loose powder. You need such a small amount that I do believe that it warrants the price tag because it is going to last so long. I will say I do not, with a capital N-O-T, like this to set my concealer. No way, no how, no. I just don't. I've tried it a couple times. It oxidizes underneath my eyes. It turns my concealer at least 2 to 3 shades darker and almost orange, which obviously is not what we want to do for our concealer since most of us are trying to at least brighten a little bit under our eyes. Some people say they use this under their eyes and love it. I just do not like it. So it is not one that I find versatile enough to use everywhere, and I wouldn't probably even use it as a finishing powder to buff. To me, this is strictly a face setting powder, but the smoothing that it does to your face is worth it. I use this over everything. I find that it does mattify almost. So if you're super oily, I think you would like this, but it does have hydrating factors to it to where it's not going to feel tight and dry if you do have dry skin. So I do tend to use this if I am using a luminous foundation that I don't want to be. I want to wear the luminous foundation because of how good it feels on my skin, but I don't necessarily want to be luminous that day. I will put this on top of it and it mattes it just enough for me to get the result that I'm wanting, if that makes sense. So, love that powder. Now, on to finishing powders and under eye powders really quick before I get to my all-time favorite powder, which honestly, if you've been watching the past few videos, you already know what that is. But you have to know my love for the Hourglass ambient lighting powders. They are everything to me. I use I drop one after saying how much I love them. Wouldn't that be my luck? I use Radiant Light and Dim Light to finish my face, which means I will take a big duo fiber brush and I will just buff my entire face after every single face component of makeup is on and done. I will buff everything out. So Radiant Light is a little bit darker and it does have a little bit more radiance to it, hence the name. It is a little bit more shiny and luminous, I guess you would say, but I don't feel like it makes me look oily when I use it as an all over finishing powder. I have no problem using this to set my entire face or to buff my entire face. It's not like the Luminous Light, for example. To me, that's straight up highlighter. I would never buff my face out with it, but Radiant Light's gorgeous, and it is dark enough to where I think if you are super, super, super fair, this will work as a bronzing, warming up of the face color. Dim Light, gorgeous. It's like a peachy, pinky beige. Same idea. It still gives a little bit of a sheen to the face, but it's not near as radiant as the Radiant Light. And then for setting my under eyes, my newfound love is Diffuse Light. I also love the NARS Crystal Powder. I don't love one or the other more. Actually, no, they're really super tied. So I'm not going to show that one, but I do love Diffuse Light. It's this very, very pale yellow with no noticeable shimmer or sparkle, and it just sets the under eyes beautifully. I've been asked what I use. I use my Sephora Pro Crease number 10 brush, which is just a very fluffy eyeshadow brush to set my under eyes, but I have seen people use this with a wet beauty blender to set. You do you. It's beautiful, I am sure, either way. Now, before I talk about my favorite powder, I know someone is going to say, what about the La Mer powder? I thought you loved the La Mer powder. Rest assured, people, I adore the La Mer powder. The original La Mer powder. Now, I did actually swatch the new one when I was in store a couple weeks ago, and it's not too far off from the original. I feel like it's a little less shimmery, and it's way more expensive for the product that you get, and that's why I have not bought it. That and because I still have the La Mer powder. But because the only one that I have that I absolutely adore, you can't technically get that one. I didn't want to show it, but I know someone's going to ask, so I did want to preface that. And also, really quick, I feel like in the past few, I know in my highlighters, top 5 highlighters, I showed you my favorite brushes to apply them, so I'm going to do that also. I have 3 favorite powder brushes. The first one is the Morphe E2 brush. It's from their Elite collection, and it's just this very large, very dense powder brush. I was going to say packer, but that doesn't really sound good. I'm a tapper, I guess you could say, and a stippler versus like this. I don't do this with my powder because it's just going to move the foundation under it. I do that when I buff because I've already set and I don't have any creams that I'm have a chance of moving around. But I just stipple in, and this is so dense and so beautiful, and it's very soft, very affordable. It's going to be the cheapest out of the ones I'm going to show you. So again, Morphe E2. Another one that I absolutely adore is the It Brushes for Ulta Velvet Luxe Plush Powder Brush. I use this a lot on my channel, and I feel like it's the one I get asked about the most. What was that brush you used? What brush did you use for your powder? What brush was that? I love that brush. It looks so soft. It is so soft, and again, it is perfect for just stippling on powder. The third is, no surprise if you've watched my last couple videos, the La Mer powder brush. Beautiful, luxurious, expensive. It's not a necessity, but it sure is nice. So I do love this powder brush. All right. Finally and quickly, my favorite powder of all time, hands down, never fail, no questions asked, is the Chanel Natural Finish Loose Powder. I also have not put a calculator to it, but I want to say this is by far the most cost-effective powder out of all the ones that I've shown you. And you're probably like, what? Yes, this is only $52 and you get a whopping ounce in this product. All the other ones are 0.35 ounces. I believe that one's covered up with my label. 0.35 ounces. The Charlotte Tilbury one is 0.28 ounces. So if I wanted to, say, get the same amount of powder in this one as this one, I would be paying 180 bucks. $52. So when you do that math, this is definitely cost effective. This is going to last you forever. This is the powder that works for everything. This is the powder that I remember when I got my first sample in my So Schwa box. I put it on. I think I was doing a foundation review or something, and I was kind of iffy on the foundation, and then I put the powder on, and I'm like, well, wait. Maybe I really like this foundation. But I didn't, or maybe I did really like the foundation. I don't remember, but it was the powder that made me think that, because it blurs pores. It gives a beautiful finish. It doesn't have flashback. In case anybody's going to ask, none of these have flashback. The By Terry, if you add too much, can, especially if you use it under your eyes. So I would not suggest using that if you're going to be doing a ton of flash photography. But this does not cause flashback. It works on mature skin. It works on teenagers. It works on 30-somethings. It works on grandmas. It works on, and I don't say that like derogatory, actual grandmothers of the bride. It works on everybody. It works over every foundation. It's so beautiful. I cannot stress enough. Go to Nordstrom, get you a sample of this, because they will put you a sample. Nordstrom's so good about samples. Get a sample of this, or if you're subscribed to the So Schwa box that I talk about all the time, add that to your queue so that you get sent a sample of this, or just trust me and spend the $52 and get this powder. It's that good. So I didn't wear it today because I've worn it in my past 2 videos. So I know if you want to see how it works, if you haven't watched those, you can go back and check those out. So that is my top 5 plus a few powders and my favorite brushes to apply them with. I hope you are enjoying this series. I feel like most of y'all are. I do have a couple more. I know I've got concealers to do. What else do I have to do? I'm going to do my top 5 eyeshadow palettes. I'm going to do my top 5 under 10. I might even do like top 5 shadow sticks, because I have so many of stuff like that. Cream shadows. I have so many cream shadows. Single shadows. So, I mean, I have a list that goes on and on. It will probably get me through 2017. But if there's anything I didn't say that you want to see a top 5 of, be sure and let me know. I do have foundations, highlighters, blushes, and bronzers already up if you want to search my channel for that. So, thank you so much for watching. As always, be sure and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos. And I hope you all have a very blessed day.